You can kill every slug you find tonight and have just as many tomorrow. That is because for every slug crawling across your lettuce after dark, there are about 20 more sitting in the top 2 inches of soil under your feet, and they never came up at all. So, what if the slugs were never really the problem, and the problem is the 19 places in your garden where they sleep all day, and you built every one of them yourself? It is 10 past 6 in the morning. The ground is still wet from rain that came through around midnight. At the end of my lettuce row there is a cedar board, about a foot square, lying flat on the dirt. I put it there on purpose. I lift it now with 2 fingers. Underneath there are 22 slugs. Some are the size of a grain of rice. 2 of them are as long as my thumb. They are packed together on the wet side of the wood where it is dark and cool, and they would have stayed there all day if I let them. You know the morning I am talking about. You walk out with your tea. The hosta that was perfect on Tuesday looks like lace. Your bean seedlings are green sticks with no leaves left on them. There is a hole chewed in the side of the biggest strawberry, the one you had been watching all week. And across the concrete step there is a silver line, dried and shining, running from nowhere to nowhere. That is the part that gets people. Not the damage. The silver line. Something was out here all night, right outside your door, and you never saw it. For 11 years I did this wrong. I want you to know that before I tell you anything else. I went out after dark with a flashlight and a pair of old chopsticks and an empty coffee can, and I picked slugs off my cabbage one at a time. I counted 1 year. 406. My wife thought I had lost my mind, standing in wet grass at 11 at night in my house slippers. And the damage in September looked exactly the same as the damage in June. 406 slugs and nothing changed. Quick word before I go further. The old methods my family uses, there is more of it than fits in any one video. I gathered the whole of it into a book you can buy in our pinned comment below. The book is the long version. If you want it, it is there. I will not mention it again. My name is Hiroshi Tanaka. I am 71. I grew up in Nagano, in the mountains, in my grandmother's kitchen garden, which was about the size of 2 parking spaces and fed 4 people. My father grew rice on the flat land below the house. I have been growing food in one place or another for 60 years, and I have not put a slug pellet on my ground in 19 of them. Not one. My lettuce is whole. My hosta is whole, and I do not go out at night with chopsticks anymore. What changed was not a product, it was a number. On any given night, only about 1 slug in 20 is above ground. The rest are down in the soil, in the cracks, under the stones, in old root channels, resting or feeding on roots where you will never see them. Which means the night I caught 40 slugs off my cabbage, there were roughly 800 on my property. 40 was not a harvest, 40 was a sample. I tried everything they sell you first. I sank beer traps and I did catch slugs. And I learned later that a beer trap pulls them in from about 3 feet away, which means half of what drowned in mine had been on its way to my neighbor's yard until I invited it over. I tried salt, which kills the slug and salts your soil, and soil takes years to forgive you. I tried the blue pellets, the metaldehyde ones, and I stopped the day my neighbor's dog spent a night at the vet. Blue is a food color. England banned metaldehyde for outdoor use in the spring of 2022. For that reason and others, I had thrown mine out long before that. So why did 406 slugs change nothing? Where were they all coming from? Stay with me, because the answer is not in the garden center. Here is why this happens, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. A slug is a mussel full of water with no skin to hold it in. That is really all it is. No shell, no shield, no way to stop the water leaving its body. In dry air, it dries out and dies in hours. So everything a slug does every night of its life is about staying wet. It does not want your lettuce more than it wants to be wet. It wants your lettuce because your lettuce is standing next to a place where it can be wet all day. That place is called a refuge, and you have more of them than you think. The pot sitting flat on the patio, the plank leaning behind the shed, the brick edging, the tray under the seed trays, the bag of compost lying on its side, the bark mulch piled 4 inches deep and pushed right up against the stem, the bottom of the fence where the grass has grown long. Every one of those is a cool, dark, damp room with the door propped open a few feet from the food. The year I finally understood this, I walked my own garden with a pen and wrote down every place a slug could spend a day. I found 19. 19, in a garden smaller than most people's. A stack of empty pots. 2 paving slabs I leaned against the shed in April and forgot. The lid of the water barrel lying face down in the grass. A piece of old carpet I had put over a bed to kill weeds, which is a thing people recommend, and which is the finest slug hotel ever invented by man. 19 rooms, all of them free, all of them mine. Now the numbers, because the numbers are why the flashlight does not work. One slug lays somewhere between 20 and 100 eggs in a clutch, and several hundred in a year. The eggs go in the top inch of soil, under something flat, and they wait. Some hatch in 3 weeks, some sit for months if the weather is wrong. So when you go out with your torch and catch 40, you are catching the ones who happen to be awake, hungry, and above ground on that one night, and you are touching none of the eggs. The next shift clocks on tomorrow. There is also a difference between the two animals you should know, because people lump them together and then wonder why half their work fails. A snail carries a shell, and a shell needs calcium. So a snail wants lime, mortar, old brick, concrete block, ivy, the underside of a pot rim. A snail climbs. I have found them 9 feet up a wall in the middle of the day, stuck fast, waiting. A slug has no shell and no reason to climb. So a slug lives in the ground and comes up from below. If you clear the ground and the damage keeps happening, look up. They are two different neighbors with two different addresses. Here's the sharp part. A bag of pellets costs $8 or $9, and you are told to put more down every 2 or 3 weeks all season. Call it 6 bags. Call it $60 a year, every year, forever, and you never get ahead, because you are killing the ones that came up and not touching the ones that did not. Moving a plant pot 3 inches off the ground costs nothing and never needs doing again. Watering at 7 in the morning instead of 7 at night costs nothing. Those 2 free things will do more for you by August than every bag of pellets you have ever bought. This is the Japanese way of thinking about it, and I do not mean that as a slogan. In the gardens I grew up around, nobody talked about pests much. They talked about the ground, tere, we call it. Tending, gravel raked so nothing sits on it. Stones set on stones, not on wet soil. Pots standing on legs or on a bed of grit. No deep blanket of bark shoved against anything. The space underneath things is managed as carefully as the space above them. And people think that is only about beauty. It is not. A garden with no dark wet floor is a garden with nowhere to spend the day. My grandmother never killed a slug that I saw. She simply never gave one a bed. So here's the thing that turns it all around. You do not have a slug problem. You have a shelter and moisture problem, and the slugs are only the receipt. Dry ground at nightfall is worth more than anything you can buy in a bottle. If you water in the evening, you are not being kind to your plants. You are laying the table. And one more thing about timing that saves you most of the work: cold stops them, dry stops them. So the damage in a year is not spread evenly across the year. It comes in bursts, in the first warm, wet fortnight of spring, and again, in the damp of early autumn when they breed. Do your work in those 2 windows, and you get most of the result for a fraction of the effort. Which brings me to what to actually do in order starting this weekend. The first step has nothing in it to buy, and it is the one people skip. Change the hour you water. Morning, before 8, and put the water on the soil at the base of the plant, not on the leaves and not on the path. By 4 in the afternoon, the top half inch of your ground is dry, and by nightfall, when they come up, they are crossing a dry floor. A dry floor is a wall to an animal with no skin. The trick is where you point the can. Most people wave it around. Put the spout down at the root and count to 5. Deep and narrow in the morning. In my garden, that one change cut the damage roughly in half, and it cost me nothing but the habit. The second step is the notebook walk. We call it taking away the resting place. Saturday morning, pen in hand, walk slowly, and write down every flat thing lying on damp ground. Then fix them one at a time. Pots go up on feet, or on 3 bottle caps if you do not want to buy feet. Boards and slabs get stood on end against a wall so the air gets behind them. The old carpet goes to the dump. Pull your mulch back 3 inches from every stem so there is a clear collar of bare soil around the plant. Cut the long grass at the bed edge short. Here is the rule I use, and it is worth writing down. Nothing flat sits on damp soil within 12 inches of anything I plan to eat. 12 inches. That is the whole rule. Now the third step, and this one will surprise you, because after telling you to take away every hiding place I am going, to tell you to build one, on purpose. In Japanese we call it itawana, a board trap. Take 1 plank, cedar if you have it, about a foot square, and lay it flat on damp soil at the end of a row, well away from your best plants. Wet it. Underneath put a cabbage leaf or a slice of melon rind face down, then leave it alone. At 7 the next morning you lift it, and everything that spent the night under there is sitting on the wood in a group. Do not use salt. Drop them in a bucket with an inch of water and a squirt of dish soap. But the real trick is what the board tells you. It is a counter. 22 under the board means you have work ahead. When you are down to 4 or 5, 3 mornings running, you have won, and you will know it without guessing. Fourth, the hard ring. Around each seedling you actually care about, lay a band of crushed oyster shell 2 inches wide and a 1/4 inch deep. In Japan it is sold as kakigara sekai, and every farm supply has it. Where I live now, it is sold as poultry grit, $8 to $12 a bag, and 1 bag lasts years. The sharpness and the dryness are what stop them. 2 things ruin it. It only works dry, so top it up after heavy rain. And the ring must be unbroken. And the plant's own leaves must not touch the ground outside it, because a leaf is a bridge, and they will walk it. I have watched them do it. Eggshells, by the way, have been tested, and they fail. Do not waste your morning crushing them. Fifth, and this is the only thing I buy. If you need a bait, use iron phosphate, never metaldehyde. The names are Sluggo, Monterey, Garden Safe, depending where you live. About $15 for a 2.5 pound jug, and it is approved for organic growing. A slug eats it, stops feeding within a day, and dies underground. It does not put your dog in the car at midnight. But here is the part nobody tells you. Do not spread it all season. Put it out in those 2 windows only, scattered thin over damp soil at dusk, about a teaspoon to a square yard. Never in little piles. A pile is a restaurant, and it draws them in from the whole bed. Sixth, 2 nights, not every night. The night after the first warm rain, go out at 10 with a red light, because a white beam makes them stop and pull in and walk your beds. Do it again the next night. The 3rd night is not worth your sleep, and I have tested that more than once. 2 nights running after rain takes the breeding adults while they are all up at the same time. And 1 adult removed in April is 300 eggs. That never happen. 7th and last, hire help. Ground beetles eat slug eggs, and they need somewhere to live that is not your vegetable bed, so leave 1 strip of long grass or a small log pile in a far corner, away from the food. A toad will take 100 slugs a week and asks only for a shallow dish of water sunk to the rim and a cool, dark place to sit. And if you want to see this thinking at full size, look up a farmer from Kyushu named Tako Furuno, who put ducks into his rice paddies in the 80s and let them eat the snails and the weeds, and made more money doing it than his neighbors made with sprays. Same idea. Do not fight the animal. Change who lives in the field. Now let me step back, because there are 2 things I would be lying to you if I left out. The first is copper. You have seen the tape. You may have bought it. Copper is not the wall people say it is. It has been tested, and the results are all over the place. When it works, it is because the band is wide, at least 2 inches, and clean and bright, and nothing is touching it. When it fails, and it fails often, it is because the copper has gone dull and green, or a leaf is hanging over it, or the slug simply pushed across and kept going. I keep copper on 2 pots by my door because it looks nice and it helps a little. I would not build a garden on it. Same with coffee grounds. There was a study showing caffeine kills slugs, and it does, at 1 or 2%. Your used grounds are nowhere near that. They will annoy a slug. They will not stop one. Put them in the compost, where they do actual good. The second honest thing is harder. 0 is the wrong target. A garden with no slugs at all is a garden with no ground beetles, no toads, no thrushes, and no hedgehogs. Because you have taken away the bottom of the food chain and everything above it moves out. Slugs also eat dead leaves and dead roots and turn them back into soil, which is most of what they actually do all night. The one you want gone is the small gray field slug on your seedlings. The big fat ones in the compost heap are cleaning up, and I leave them be. What you are aiming for is not an empty garden. It is a garden where the damage sits below the level where it bothers you. In my rows, that means I lose the odd outside lettuce leaf, and I have not lost a whole plant in years. And here is one bigger than a lettuce. In 1981, a snail was brought into Japan from South America to be farmed and eaten. The golden apple snail. The business failed, the snails were let loose, and within a few years they were eating young rice out of paddies all across the south of the country. They are still there. Whole prefectures have spent 40 years managing an animal that arrived in a crate. What actually works against them is not a chemical, it is water level. Keep the paddies shallow in the first weeks, and the snail cannot reach the young rice. Same lesson, larger field. Now the money, since we are being plain. Pellets at $8 a bag 6 times a year is $60 a year. And it never ends. What I have described is one bag of grit that lasts 3 years, one jug of iron phosphate a year at $15, one plank you already own, and a change to the hour you water. Under $20 a season after the first one, and it gets easier every year instead of harder because the population goes down and stays down. And no dog in the car at midnight, no blue pellets where a grandchild plays. That part is not about money. My grandmother had a line about this, and it took me 40 years to understand it. She said the garden has no pests, it has guests, and someone opened the door. Every slug on my lettuce that year had come out from under something I put down. In ground I watered at the wrong hour. Beside a wall I let the ivy cover. I did all of it. Nobody did it to me. And the day I understood that, the work got smaller instead of bigger. Because you cannot control an animal, but you can absolutely control a plank of wood lying in the wrong place. So here is what I want you to do tonight. Not this weekend. Tonight. Wait until it is properly dark, about 10 o'clock. Take a torch out, stand at your worst bed and count for 5 minutes. Just count. Write the number down, because that number is your before. Then take any flatboard or an old roof tile, wet it, put a cabbage leaf under it, and lay it on the soil at the end of that bed. Tomorrow at 7, lift it. Whatever is under there was going to be on your plants tomorrow night. Then walk around with your pen and find your 19. Pots up, mulch back, boards on end, and tomorrow, water in the morning. Then come back and tell me in the comments what your 5-minute count was and what was under your board the next morning. I read them. I want both numbers, the night count and the board count. Because in a month, I want you to do it again and see the difference yourself. That is the only proof that matters. Next time, I am going to show you what my grandmother did with a piece of bamboo, a handful of rice bran, and a lid set into the soil at the end of a cabbage row to stop cutworms cutting seedlings off at the ground overnight. It costs nothing, it takes 4 minutes to make, and it works better than anything in a bottle, because the cutworm walks into it on its own and never comes out. Until then, water in the morning, lift the board, and remember that the ground is the garden. Everything else is only what grows out of it.